And hello, welcome YouTube. Welcome to this video of OpenFOAM with C++. So today we want to talk a little bit more about what do you call that, classes again. So we've been talking about classes in the last few videos, and I was saying that okay, if you have many classes, right? If you have many classes, it's best always to separate them out into different files. So this is what we were left. Let's see, class C.C++. This is what we were left with in the last video. Okay, so this is what we were left with in the last video. Though of course this is kind of redundant. I mean the other one is that we have the object-oriented. Okay, the object-oriented.C++. So there are two examples for you. They're very similar. I have one with a constructor and destructor here, along with some public and private functions and variables. Okay, all of them are deal with arrays. Now you see all of this kind of makes the code pretty long. Okay, all of this kind of makes the code pretty long, and it's sort of in the our best interest to actually separate them out. And of course, the other reason you would want to kind of separate things out is because this is the convention that's being used in OpenFOAM. So you would okay, well, we don't have to separate it out so that you can use OpenFOAM. But what I'm saying is that OpenFOAM kind of manages all these files in this manner. As you can see here, you have a uequation.h, for example. You have a PimpleFoam.c. Okay, all of these have this is the int main part, and then you have all these includes. All right, all these includes, and what does this include do? It basically helps us to start, defining functions and do some other things along with that, right? So normally when you have these OpenFOAM files, we will have several H files, which are called header files, and several C files. Now the simplest way of explaining or introducing us. Okay, you see usually our C++ file, it will have a main part of the file. This is the main part. Okay, and you will have this part where you start defining all your functions and classes, and then you will also have the parts where you actually code down all your functions. Alright, all this part, your functions and members of your class, will be coded towards the end. So now over here, this is what we tend to like to call the header, and all the stuff at the back, there will be a main part over here, a main part of the function of your main file here, and then you will have all of these functions at the back, and this is what you probably call the source file. All right. Of course, I just want to give credit where credit's due. First, I learned this from Bucky C++ programming tutorial, so do go and check it out. He puts it very simply, but of course these are not catered with OpenFOAM in mind, but there are more general ways of doing the C++. Okay, so right, and this is my last video, right? Yeah, okay, so this is very good. One of the good explanations is for this C++ for school. Okay, it talks about okay, let me check how much time. Okay, I have enough time. It checks the what am I saying here? It shows you one example of putting these files in different folders. Okay, so for example, you have a header file here, and it gives you a sort of a template. So you can see it's pretty simple. For the header file, you don't actually have any other includes, but you have this if and def, define, and if. Okay, so that's the header file. I'll explain what that is shortly. This if not def, define, blah blah blah. Okay, then you have your implementation file. Implementation file, remember, it's where we have all our functions being defined. So it's pretty much a copy paste kind of a thing. And then you just have this includes over here. Then you have this thing called the client code, according to the C++ for school. Alright, so that's the part where we have all the main files there. And you can see it's really just the main files, and the only thing we kind of need to pay attention to is well, for the client code or the main file, we have to include the header file over here, and that's the only thing we kind of need to add in. Over here in the implementation file, we need to have all our relevant includes along with this header file here, and the rest are all the same. And in the header file, we have to have this if and def time h, define time h, and if. Okay, so that's this is what we need to take note of. Then how do we compile everything? Okay, if you look at this website called the makefile, what we need to do is actually compile all the C++ files together. That includes the implementation file here, where you have all your code for all your functions and classes, and of course your client code, which is this int main part. So these are the two things we need to compile to make one binary file. Alright, so let me show you one of the simplest examples. Okay, so one of the simplest examples is what I made in this class separate file over here. Okay, so this is basically the same as what I did before. Okay, so I have all of these class members here using the classy.c++ file. Of course, these two are kind of redundant. I can actually just delete. Okay, but anyway, that's like irrelevant to this video. Okay, so but the main thing is that you have this include vectors.h. I can put it within the main file. I don't need to put it before over here. Okay, it's not as long as you include, you start printing out your definitions like before. You have to, I mean, this, when you press include time.h, then C++ will read the time.h file. And likewise, if I have an include vectors.h here, it is only at this part where you have your vectors.h file being read. Then after that, you can use the functions within this vectors.h file. And if you see, your OpenFOAM source code over here, okay, OpenFOAM.c, you'll notice that some includes are made before the main file, and some includes are made after you start your main file. Okay, so both of them are fine. Just got to make sure you have to make sure all your includes are there before you start your using the functions within. So what am I talking about? Okay, let's give you concrete examples. Okay, so this is the part of the class. Then over here you have all your stuff being defined, all your functions being defined, and basically it's the same structure as what I was discussing before. Okay, alright, so this is one where I have my vector length. Alright, so the only difference I put here is this, in this whole code, is this include vectors.h, and then of course I execute the function within there called main2. So let's take a look at what the file looks like. Okay, let's do vectors.h. Okay, so I have my if and def and define, and I actually have all my includes here. Now this part, as you know, plus this namespace std, all of this is actually redundant. You can just delete them. But if you're lazy, you can just leave them there. It will make the code a bit untidy. I recommend deleting it as per what you see over here. But if you're lazy, you can just leave it there. it won't really make too much of a difference. Your code will still compile, but it's just, you know, messy and unnecessary. Okay, so let's see the header file. So here all of this code is redundant. I just define a new function called main2. So this is the most basic way of doing things. So I basically define a new function here. You can define classes here as well, and we will talk about doing that once we get the basics done. Okay, so this is how you type it. You make sure you have your if and def and define and an if in your main file. What are these called? These are actually called header guards. According to here, they are called header guards. What it says is that if and def, it means if not defined. So for example, you have a header file underscore h, says if and def header file h. If it's not defined, then you define this header file h, and then you have all your declarations over here. For example, int main2, and then you have end if. So what it says here, it's basically it says this: if the header file is included again in the same file, header file h would have already been defined for the first time, and so the contents of the header were included. So if and def, the if and def guard will then ensure that the contents of the folder of the header will be ignored. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, alright, what does this mean? So let me go to my classy.c++ file and just do an explanation. So let's say I include the vectors.h here. What this will do is that it will read all the content within the vectors.h file. Okay, so it will read all the contents in the vectors.h file, including defining your function main2. Alright, so I define the function main2, and let's say for example I got a bit fussy or whatnot, and I included another vectors.h here. Alright, what C++ will do? Okay, okay, let me quit. It will read the vectors.h the first time. Alright, okay, so you will read the vectors.h the first time. So the first time it is read, it will look for this variable called vectors_h. So if vectors_h is not defined yet, then we define vectors_h. So vectors_h is defined. Then it will start reading all of these values here. So what it should be read like is this. So if vectors_h is not defined, we define vectors_h, and then this is all the code that will be executed within this header file. Okay, and then you have your end if. So these two are basically if loops. So if you run this code again, the exact same code, the second time round, vectors_h will be defined. If vectors_h is defined, then all of this code will not be run, and then you kind of skip the whole thing. So this is what a header guard is. So you don't need to have this vectors_h over here defined. You can actually do it twice, but that's what the purpose of this header guard here is for. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so of course you have your header file, and of course I need a file where I actually define all my functions, and this will be the what do you call that, implementation file. So I'll use that term here provided. So what it needs here is all the includes, and you need to include vectors.h, and this is where I define my function, and I just have a function that prints out trollololol. Okay, so that's main2. Okay, so if I go to classy.c++, okay, I have two includes of the vector h here. Then after that I print out this main2 function, and then it should say trollololol. Okay, so how do you compile? Basically it's like this: classy.c++ and vectors.c++. Okay, with the output vectors 1. Okay, I just made the output called vectors1. So you only need to compile your C++ files. Okay, so when it's done, it will do that. Then I do vectors1, and there will be a line of code saying trollololol here. Okay, so what happens then if I don't have my include file? If I don't have my indef, so will it still work? I mean, yes, it will still work. It should still work, as you can see here, but basically you have your int main2 defined twice, so that's kind of unnecessary. So let's do vectors1 again. It will just print out exactly the same thing. So you'll still print out trollololol because actually I just read the files twice. It's a bit hard to demonstrate here, but yeah, basically it just prints the file out twice. I mean, it will define the function main2 twice, and that is it. So moral of the story, you can put the include vectors.h file over here, or you can put it over here. It's really up to you. So hopefully that is clear. Okay, so we have a vectors.h, right, and a vectors.c++. So that's the basic file, but I'm going to delete all of this .c++ vectors.h, and let's do it from scratch. All right, and so that you'll have a better way of seeing what's happening. Okay, what's going on. So you don't always need the vectors. You don't always need the if and the if not define all and then define the vectors h. But anyway, I mean, just for completeness sake, we'll do it that way. Okay, so let's first make a header file. So I'm just going to give you the example now. So what I'll do is vi vectors.h. Okay, I will save this file, and I will start with my header guards. If and def. So what should I name my header guard? It's really up to you, but good practice is to always make sure, I guess they're all in capitals. I mean, it's nice to do that, but what you really must beware of is that vectors.h should not be used by any other header file, and the way you spell it here must be exactly the way you spell it over here. Okay, if not define vectors h underscore h, then define vectors underscore h. You don't really need this to run the file as you saw before, but these are good header guards so that you don't do it too much. You don't read your h file more than once. So what do I put here? Again, we don't really need anything else. Okay, we can just, okay, you see this part, you can just copy and paste your class file here. So let's copy and paste the class file over here, vi classy.c++, and I will copy and paste all of these class definitions over here. Okay, so at vi vectors.h, and I'll paste all my class definitions here, and I want to take this part out. All right. Okay. And of course, I guess I can just copy and paste this, but that's kind of redundant. All right. vi vectors.h, and then I will just paste these two vectors here. Then, since there's no more header file here, I will need to put an include. Okay, vectors.h. All right, so vectors.h is included here. All right, and if I compile this should run nicely. Okay, I don't need to have a so-called extra C++ file for all of these files here. Technically, it should compile nicely. So this will just do the vectors.h over here, and everything else should run. So let's try doing it. G++. Classy.c++ with output vectors. Okay, so if I output the vectors, okay, all the functions are being run there. Okay, perfect. So now let us do the second part. The second part is quite simple. In fact, I will do it pretty lazily. So I'll just cp copy the class C.C++ into vectors.C++. Okay, so let's see the vectors.C++. All right. Okay, the easiest way to make this C++ file, the client code, so to speak, at the bottom, the implementation file, is I basically copy and paste everything here, and I just delete the main part. Okay, I'll just delete the main part. So I'll just delete the main part here, and that is how you define it. So the class C.C++ is here. I can do 100 dd. Okay, so you'll delete everything at the bottom. Okay, so now let's compile it again. Class C.C++, vectors.C++, and it goes into vectors. Okay, with the output of vectors. Okay, so it will compile nicely, and if I run vectors, it will do everything as per what it's supposed to do. Okay, so you can see that now the code is very, very short in this main file. And if I do it, okay, time is up, I don't want to take too long, but you can see just copy and paste it here. It will do the trick. All right, you roughly know what to do. Okay, so all we need to do is to make a proper header file, and we'll just copy and paste over most of the class C.C++ into the vectors.C++ after we add the extra line of include, and we just copy and paste accordingly, and that's how you kind of separate it out and compile it properly. Okay, so thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again. Bye bye.